Okay, so we've got some pieces here about the Romanian political scene, and we're going to take a deep dive into it.
Yeah.
Specifically, we've got a discussion from the founders of Duhovnic.ro, so Romanian media
Yeah.
outlet.
Right.
And we're going to kind of get their perspective on what's going on.
Yeah.
Sounds like things are pretty wild over there.
Yeah, it's Romania's been in the news a bit lately. It seems like canceled elections and
Yeah,
international attention.
yeah, a whirlwind.
Definitely a whirlwind.
So let's jump in.
Sounds good.
It seems like they're really kind of grappling with Romania's vulnerability, especially with what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge backdrop to all of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
This sense of anxiety, uncertainty, for sure. And what we have here, I think, is a glimpse into what a lot of Romanians are feeling right now.
Okay.
You know, particularly these founders, they come from a perspective that's rooted in faith and tradition.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting lens to view all of this through.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. It's not just like looking at the headlines, but we're hearing from people who are living through this turmoil.
Exactly.
And that quote that really struck me, what will we do? Will we go out with a cross and our priests in the many churches and just go with the I feel a will you there?
It's powerful imagery, isn't it?
Yeah.
It speaks to this idea that traditional values, traditional institutions might not be enough in today's world.
Right. And they're questioning, can these pillars that have been so central to Romanian identity, can they withstand these 21st century pressures?
Right. The pressures of globalization, geopolitics, the digital age, all of it.
And it's not just those external threats, right? They're worried about internal divisions within Romanian society.
That's right.
And the spread of propaganda and this lack of transparency around the elections.
Yeah, they talk a lot about how decisions were made behind closed doors, and there's this sense that, yeah, something's not quite right.
Right. And this lack of transparency seems to be eroding trust, not just within Romania, but also with their international partners.
Absolutely. They're calling for more accountability, more open dialogue about the challenges facing the country.
So this brings us to another interesting point. They discuss this whole idea of social media and propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
How do they view that?
Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, they're worried about misinformation spreading rapidly through these channels, but they also suggest that Romania's limited social media access might have actually shielded them from the worst of it so far.
Huh. So it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they acknowledge that the kind of manipulation we've seen in other countries hasn't been as prevalent in Romania, yet at least not on the same scale.
Okay, so is Romania about to be caught in the crossfire of this global information war, or will they be able to avoid it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the founders seem to believe that education is key, promoting media literacy, critical thinking skills among Romanians. That's what they see as crucial to counteracting the threat of misinformation.
So they're basically saying that Romanians need to be prepared for a new type of battle, one fought with information instead of weapons.
Precisely. They're sounding the alarm and calling for a collective effort to fortify Romania's digital defenses.
Wow, it's like they're preparing for a siege.
In a way, they are, and it's a fascinating glimpse into the challenges facing not just Romania, but many nations around the world as they grapple with this new digital landscape.
Yeah, it's a whole new world out there.
It is.
And it seems like Romania is right on the front lines.
It certainly seems that way.
So we've got this tension between tradition and modernity playing out in Romania.
Yeah, it's palpable, isn't it?
Yeah, like they're caught between holding on to their heritage and adapting to this globalized world.
Exactly. And then you throw in the whole geopolitical rivalry between the U.S. and the EU.
Right, and Romania's stuck right in the middle of it.
And that leads us to JD Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference.
Oh yeah, the U.S. Vice President didn't hold back.
He did not. He called out Europe for what he called anti-democratic behavior, and he specifically pointed to Romania as an example.
Yeah, he went right for it. Canceled elections, restrictions on free speech, uncontrolled immigration.
It's pretty striking to see the U.S. Vice President directly criticizing a key ally on a global stage.
Yeah, like what does that mean for their relationship?
Right. It's a bold move. It raises questions about the future of the transatlantic alliance.
So how did the Duhovnic.ro founders react to all of this?
They see Vance's speech as further evidence of the pressures facing Romania. It validates their concerns about external influence, the erosion of their country's autonomy.
It's like they're asking themselves, who are our true allies? Who can we trust?
Exactly. And what does this mean for our future as a nation?
So where does Romania go from here? Do they align with the West chart a more neutral course?
Those are big questions, aren't they?
Yeah, it seems like they're wrestling with their identity on the world stage.
They are, and it's not just the founders. I think a lot of Romanians are feeling this sense of unease.
Yeah, facing economic uncertainty, political instability, this feeling that their values are under threat.
It's against this backdrop that they're trying to make sense of the situation.
So what are the potential consequences if Romania is seen as moving away from the West?
Well, there's a possibility that they become increasingly isolated within the EU.
Hmm,
They could face economic sanctions, political pressure, maybe even expulsion from the bloc.
that would be a huge blow for Romania.
It would losing access to the EU market funding, it would severely impact their economy.
Yeah, and what about the U.S.? What's their role in all of this?
Well, the U.S. has always had a strategic interest in Romania.
Because of their location near Russia.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, and their role in NATO.
So the U.S. is not just going to sit back and watch if Romania starts getting cozy with Russia.
I don't think so. They have a history of intervening in Romanian politics.
So it's a delicate balancing act for the U.S.
It is. They need to promote their interests without appearing to dictate Romania's decisions.
It's like a high-stakes game of chess with Romania as the pawn.
A very apt analogy.
And the Duhovnic.ro founders, they seem to understand just how precarious their position is.
They do, and their anxieties reflect the broader uncertainties facing many Romanians.
Yeah, trying to navigate this complex geopolitical landscape while holding on to their cultural identity.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It's like Romania's caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to maintain their autonomy in this interconnected world. What's the best path forward?
Well, one option is to really commit to the West, strengthen those ties with the EU and NATO, become like a model partner.
Right, but that could involve some tough choices.
Yeah, like what?
Well, they might have to address those concerns about transparency
Hmm.
and maybe even take a tougher stance towards Russia.
But wouldn't that cause more division within Romania? Some people might feel like they're giving up too much.
It's definitely a risk. That's why open dialogue is so important, finding a way to balance domestic interests with international obligations.
Okay, so what about the opposite? What about a more neutral approach? Stay out of the US-EU rivalry, focus on regional relationships, maybe even with Russia.
That's tricky. It could be seen as a sign of weakness, and it might not be enough to keep Russia at bay.
Plus, it could alienate their Western allies.
Yeah, leading to even more isolation.
So it seems like there's no easy answer for Romania.
Not really. Every option has its downsides.
And the Duhovnic.ro founders, their discussion really highlights how difficult this is for them.
Yeah, they're facing economic uncertainty, political pressure, the sense that their traditional values are fading away.
It's like a microcosm of what so many countries are going through right now.
Yeah, this clash between globalization and local identity.
And they keep coming back to this idea of media literacy, critical thinking.
Right, they're saying that Romanians need to be able to sift through all the noise and figure out what's true.
So they can make informed decisions about their future.
Exactly. That's essential for any democracy, to be resilient against manipulation and propaganda.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening. It's amazing how events in one country can have such a big impact on the rest of the world.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that these global issues always have a human element at their core.
Like those anxieties that the Duhovnic.ro founders expressed, those are probably shared by people all over the planet.
Absolutely.
So what's the takeaway here? It seems like Romania's at a crossroads.
Yeah, they've got some big decisions to make.
And those decisions could have repercussions far beyond their borders.
Exactly. And while we can't predict what will happen, we can learn from the people who are living through these challenges.
Like those founders, their insights are so valuable.
They are. They're calling for transparency dialogue, a more informed public.
That's a message we should all take to heart.
Absolutely.
In a world that's constantly changing, staying informed is more important than ever.
It is. It's how we make sense of things and hopefully build a better future for everyone.
Well said. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But keep those conversations going. Keep asking those tough questions. You never know what you might discover.